1486, Mahaprabhu appeared. Devashi Radhika Mataji can correct me, but at that time, before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, up to the 12th century approximately, the capital of Bengal was Navadvip. There was one famous king, Lakshman Sena, as far as I remember. He was a good king because he supported the Brahmanas, and the Brahmanas could do the job they had to do. They did yagyas, they were teaching Vedic knowledge to the people, they were having poetic presentations, books were written, because Brahmanas generally depend on the support of others. They're not working for money, but their job is to distribute knowledge. So in the 12th century, the invaders, the Islam invaders came. They threw Lakshman Sena out. They took over, and they weren't interested to support Brahmanas that they could distribute Vedic knowledge. It was a tough time for the Brahmanas to live, and the system was that the emperor or the king in West Bengal, he was working through the zamindars, the landlords. There were people who had a lot of money. They were generally Hindus. And the king of Bengal allowed them, these landlords, to be quite independent as long as they paid nice taxes to them and made beautiful gifts. But they wanted to make sure, and the landlords kind of took over the mood of the king, that it's not about Vedic knowledge, it's about sense gratification, material opulence. They were exploiting people, and the Brahmanas became practically jobless and had no opportunity, no support, even no freedom to present Vedic knowledge to the people. So that was a tough time. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in 1481, it was difficult. We know about Vaishnavas, Advaitacharya and Shantipur, together with Haridas. They were struggling. Haridas, we know how he's been beaten because he was chanting publicly as a so-called Muslim the holy name. But it was a difficult time. And Lord Chaitanya, we know now these two reasons he came after. In the beginning, he was more like a smart young Brahmana who liked to fight with other Brahmanas. Not physically, but he loved to argue. He was an expert in logic, he was an expert in Sanskrit grammar and Bengali language, and he loved just to play, in the sense, to defeat others, to show he's more smart, more logic and all that stuff. And Advaitacharya didn't really get close to him because Mahaprabhu didn't manifest much of that Vaishnava attitude. It changed when his father, Jagannath Mishra, passed away. He went to East Bengal to do some offering on behalf of his family to the forefathers, including his father who passed away. And there he met his spiritual master, who was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. And that meeting caused that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu changed, and he started to manifest his Vaishnava nature, and especially the Sankirtan, the Kirtan. So when he returned from East Bengal, he found in Srivas, a neighbor, the ideal place. They had Kirtan together, and they had ecstatic Kirtans together. They even closed the doors at night because they knew if normal people, or there were Muslims there were smarta Brahmanas there who were more concerned about the ritualistic and not about the ecstasy of the holy name, they wouldn't understand it. They might even make offenses against the holy name, so it was closed. But at one point, Lord Chaitanya realized we have to do both. We do something for our own spiritual nourishment and inspiration, but we have to do something for the people in general. And he started to do this public kirtan with the holy name. And as you all know, this didn't make everyone happy. Everyone who went on Harinam notices that as well. Depends where you are. But mostly some people don't like it. It's kind of pushy, ecstatic, strange, unknown to that Western culture. So it's always an art how to present something as pure as possible, as powerful as possible, but at the same time have the necessary empathy, how much and in which way you present it best. So I want to make it short, but Lord Chaitanya felt a lot of opposition from a lot of people, especially when he was manifesting the deeper bhavas in relationship to Radha Krishna. So at one point he decided to take sannyas, because at that time, although it was considered already Kali Yuga and also in West Bengal due to the influence of the Muslims at that time, it was still that Varnashram was to a great extent respected. People knew what a brahmachari is, what a grihastha is, what the duties of a vanaprash and what a sannyasi is. They knew what Shudras, Vaishyas, Kshatriyas and Brahmanas are. So Lord Chaitanya understood people will not appreciate my attempt to bring the process to attain Krishna consciousness, liberation, the spiritual perfection in this age of Kali, if I remain a grihastha. So he took sannyas. He went to Jagannath Puri. He stayed for a short time there, manifested deep ecstatic love for Lord Jagannath, then went on the 2-year tour all over India. And then was his desire became very strong to visit Vrindavan. At one point, Lord Chaitanya kind of stopped to be active in public as a preacher, as a Sankirtan leader. He still organized the annual Rath Yatra with who would do which kirtan in which group, but he was going more and more in seclusion in the Gambhira, and only with a very few very elevated Vaishnavas he was sharing his bhava, his spiritual ecstasies in relationship to Radha Krishna. His purpose, he came to experience that on this planet. The interesting thing is, and that is for me also most inspiring, when Lord Chaitanya kind of stopped to publicly be active with the people in general to bring them Krishna consciousness, he sent Nityananda Prabhu to Bengal to do that. And Lord Chaitanya, as I mentioned before, he was a sannyasi, he was living in seclusion, he was shaved, he was limping very simply. But Lord Nityananda, who is considered Balaram, his elder brother, they were not physically brothers at that time, but Lord Chaitanya accepted him as his brother. Lord Nityananda, I think he appeared about 14 years before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Ekachakra. He toured all over India, then they met in Navadvip, and Lord Chaitanya sent him to Bengal to preach. What is unique about that? Nityananda Prabhu is considered an avadutta, means he kind of transcends the normal social etiquettes people have, because an avadutta is supposed to be on a higher level than the mundane dualities and mundane dharmas and mundane rules and regulations. Of course, sometimes people try to imitate, but that would be totally wrong. Lord Nityananda Prabhu had a very colorful turban. He was wearing necklaces, he was wearing earrings, he was very colorful, he was very jolly. And especially, he had no problem going to criminals, to outcasts, to those who were rejected by the Vedic society. He embraced them, he hugged them, he welcomed them. You're Krishna's eternal servant, let's join together the Sankirtan movement and chant. He was very attractive to these kind of people, which generally, or who generally were rejected by society. It's like, I can tell for myself, if I see Randständige, Kloschar, you know, like kind of an outcast, a beggar who hasn't washed his cloth and his face for 3 months and who's probably drinking not only Charanamrita but also other liquids, I take some distance. Or I remember even in Calcutta, when I was often in Mayapur in the 80s and 90s, I saw those people who were like sick from leprosy, and I could not go close. And I knew that Mother Teresa, she could go and said, "You're a member of our community, please come." She touched them and brought these people there. And I was, at that time, I remember, I was kind of a little bit frustrated, I don't know. I thought, I'm supposed to be a spiritual person, chanting Hare Krishna, going to Mayapur, practicing Krishna consciousness. And these people, oh, I don't want to get close to. And this Mother Teresa, she's a Christian, she's probably not vegetarian and all these things, but she can do that. Probably she's much more advanced than me. And then I asked Sri Ram, you know him, how to understand that. And he said something nice, which kind of a little bit appeased me. He said, you know, everyone has his or her different duties to follow. Not everyone has to go to these mlechas and, you know, these fallen people who may be not so clean and not so nice and not so sattvic and not so intelligent. But some have that inclination, have that social quality. And it's wonderful if they do it. So that was Nityananda Prabhu. He was able to attract them, and I think that's an important aspect. If we want to fulfill the Yuga Dharma, even if we have for some reason not anymore the energy or the inclination or the taste or the talent to reach normal people with Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, we should make sure others can do that, to have that taste. That's for me the aspect which is what I take from Nityananda Prabhu's on behalf of Lord Chaitanya's instruction preaching in West Bengal. I mentioned that during the time of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, more or less Varnashram, these Vedic social orders, were intact, and Lord Chaitanya himself kind of strictly followed them. But about 100 years later, 17th century, with Shyamananda Prabhu, then also Narottam Das Thakur, came another mood, which is very interesting. It's the Bhagavad Dharma. Bhagavad Dharma can be translated, the Dharma is whatever is in relationship to Krishna. It's not about whether you're Grihasta or Sannyasi, it's not about whether you're man or woman, it's not about whether you're junior or senior, it's about the bhava you have and the rasa you have. And it was a very interesting time. There were gurus, sannyasis, supporting their, financially, grihasta, like disciples, because they felt they're more qualified to preach. There were women, souls in a female body, having the position of guru. So that was a very interesting period, but it has one little advantage. If people, are not qualified, people are generally more on an external, physical, social platform. They judge things, they judge people according to their body, their age, their male, female, their position, etc. They will misunderstand that. So what happened? Sahajya movement started to blossom because there was no strict regulation according to Varnashram anymore. And those elevated souls, that was their mood. It's like if someone is a Paramahansa. We know there are like 3 categories of Vaishnavas. There's the Kanishta, the beginner, who still has a material perspective. Then there's the Madhyamadikari, who's more advanced and can differentiate who's most advanced, who's equal, who's less advanced. And there's the Paramahansa, who sees everyone as more advanced and sees himself or herself as fallen. It's such an elevated position. You see only advanced spirit souls engaged in Krishna consciousness. But Prabhupada made a nice point: if you want to act in this world, even if you're Paramahansa, you have to come back on that level. So when these Sahajyas took kind of over, because there were no more rules, regulations, because the elevated Vaishnavas were in a different mood, because they were experiencing the Baba in the heart and not so much the social aspect. The Babajis at that time, under the leadership of Jagannath Das Babaji, yes, this garland is for Akhandati Prabhu. No, I flatly refuse. I can't. It's just, thank you. He's more humble than me. So these Sahajyas, which is sometimes translated as taking spiritual life cheap, externally try to manifest as if they would be spiritually very advanced, but in their consciousness they're still on a materialistic level. There were different Sahajya groups. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote a book about, I think, 19 or more different groups explained their perverted, diverted philosophies, but they were blossoming. So that was a time when Jagannatha Babaji and other Babajis were concerned that we have to do something. And in Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they found a personality who could bring that. And which meant it needed some kind of organization. If everything and anything is free, everyone can claim Radha Krishna, temple here, chanting there, but we can also take some elements which help our consciousness with drugs or liquor, or we can imitate the Rasa Leela and other aspects, then it's becoming, of course, topsy-turvy. And the Vaishnava name, the name of Vaishnavas, before Lord Chaitanya came and before Bhaktivinoda Thakur came, actually had quite a bad name, because in the name of Vaishnavism, so many Sahajias presented a strange form of Krishna consciousness. So it had to become regulated. And that's the advantage and the must and the need of an organization, which can tell this is according to Shastra, this is according to Lord Chaitanya or the Goswamis, these are the rules in an ashram, these are the regulations in a temple, and this is not. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually started in a rather soft way through Namhata. That's the program he did in the villages. It wasn't super strict, but the coming together, Krishna Katha, certain regulations were there with the holy name and the market. But it was necessary because, again, as I mentioned, Vaishnavas were in a bad reputation. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur then was able, he was appearing 1838, he was on this planet till 1914. He was active in a time where India had a great challenge because the Mughals weren't very strong anymore, but the British. And the British were similar smart like the Mughals. The Mughals knew we are too little, so we tried to work through the Zamindars, to these landlords who control the people and give us taxes and gifts. And the English tried something similar, but not with physical or material or wealth, but through intelligence. Bhadraloka, maybe you know that term, this was a time in the 19th century when young, intelligent Bengali people were specially trained by the British to bring in Western thought, Western religious themes in order to influence and ultimately control the general people through these young Bengalis. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was one of them himself. He was born in a Shakta family, wealthy family. Shakta means they were worshipping Kali. But then the uncle of his mother, he was one of the leaders in the Bhadraloka. They had their own university in Calcutta. And he was studying at that university. And what nowadays the biographers claim about Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which is so interesting, he was not rejecting Western academic studies and realizations, but he took them in order to explain to more academic people and at the same time simple people the Vedic understanding. He was not rejecting the Vedic tradition, he was strengthening it, he was not rejecting Western understanding, but he was using it in a more spiritual way. He made that lovely combination, synchronization of these both worlds. And of course, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur grew older, he was also going more and more into the bhavas. Time will not be enough. The song we were singing, we is the wrong word, I wasn't here yet, you were singing at 6:30, is a beautiful song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and you could see this combination of poetry and deep spiritual bhava. Materially speaking, the highest level of every language is poetry. And the highest aspect of every culture is spirituality. And the spirituality in relationship to Krishna, and especially in separation, and love and deep devotion to Krishna, is, so to say, the highest. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was able to combine that. On one hand, simple words, mainly Bengali words, but with very deep meaning, phonetically, from the sound very beautiful, and from the meaning deep Krishna consciousness. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur saw how society changes fast. The modern thought of Western academics and influence became bigger and bigger. He started on behalf of Jagannatha Babaji and the other Babajis in Navadvip, tried to structure Krishna consciousness, what Rupa Goswami and Lord Chaitanya were teaching, but he felt, wow, it's too big. So he was praying for a ray of Vishnu, and most of you know he had, I think, 14 children, or not all of them became, grew older, passed away in a young age, but one of them was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, for whom he was praying, because he understood we need more structure, more clarity, more management and organization in order to establish what Rupa Goswami and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were actually teaching. So he then founded the Gaudiya Math, and as we know, Prabhupada was in his early 20s when he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in Calcutta. Immediately felt he's my spiritual master, and he got the instruction to bring Krishna consciousness to the West. We know it wasn't easy for Prabhupada to come to the West. There were no red carpets, there were no flights, there were no luxury ships. He was on a steam, like a ship for goods, not actually to transport people. Those who know Switzerland or the trains, you have like person cars to transport persons, and you have cars, cargo, to transport goods. So that was a ship to transport cargo. And we know Prabhupada had a heart attack, and it was a struggle. And it was a struggle to be in America, cold, no one was interested. But gradually a few serious souls were there, and he had that strong desire, let the whole world be blessed with Krishna consciousness. So devotees were in France at that time active, from Germany also. A few times devotees came to Zurich to distribute books. They even had a small center at that time in the 70s. And then when Guru Granga Prabhu, who was is an American devotee, joined in France, Prabhupada asked him, go to Switzerland to preach. So he first started in Geneva. I heard in the very beginning, early 70s, they had really no Lakshmi, no money, but they had this instruction to bring Krishna consciousness to Switzerland. So in the beginning, they were sometimes sleeping under the bridges with the clochards, with the outcasts. And then they could manage to get a room in a youth hostel. And as time passed by, they were able to rent a house in Petit-Lancy. I think some of you went there when this Jubilee was celebrated a couple of years ago. And there, 49 years ago, must have been October, and Ekadashi Day, Shri Gaura-Nitai came to Switzerland. They were originally planned for France. Bhagavan was the GBC at that time in France, but I had a little, something was not perfect on the murtis. So I said, no, I don't want them. We want perfect murtis only. So then Guru Ganga saw his chance. Well, then I take them. And sometimes, you know, if you're very strict and smarta, if the murti is not perfect, then it cannot be installed. But you know that better than me. I heard the murtis Radhalanda and Ishvara. There were also something not, and the person who purchased them, like a pious Hindu gentleman, he didn't want them because they were not perfect. We can only install perfect murtis. So Prabhupada saw them, pack them, we take them. So in that sense, Guru Ganga told us how it was. He was in Paris, he got the permission to take them to Switzerland. He was traveling by train from Paris to Geneva and back. So he decided, I cannot officially take them to Switzerland. But I don't want that the customers touch them, and you know, there's maybe something inside, hidden in those murtis. So he said, no, I cannot show it to them. They will be very scared. What is this these huge puppets or whatever that he brings here to Switzerland. So he decided he wants to smuggle them, and he wrapped them in a sleeping bag, and in the train on the top holder they were there, and he was just sweating blood, sweat and tears. Bonjour, tous les billets, s'il vous plaît, les passports, quelque chose à douaner or so, anything for... And you know, it's probably a very intensive Nishinga prayers. And as we know, Krishna is very merciful, so oh, va bien, dormez bien, bonne nuit, and everything was fine, so they came to Geneva. I think at that time, devotees like Rohini Sutta Prabhu, Jai Gurudev, they were around. Later on, I think in 76, those who know them, Purushottama, Ujjvala Nilamoni, and his younger brother, who's not with us anymore, joined. And from Petit Lancy, they went to a castle. I think, you know, Guru Granga coming from the zone of Bhagavan, where castles are the norm. They had also one near Paris, which then later on they closed. Krishnaville, I think they called it. Yes, and then of course New Mayapur and Radhadesh, etc. So that was the mood. So he probably felt we also need a castle in Switzerland. So they had one gentleman gave quite some Lakshmi, so they were able to have do the down payment. It wasn't purchased, just rented. They had this nice castle in Petit Lancy. The problem was it was very expensive. The miracle didn't happen. That hundreds joined, and those who joined were generally Swiss-German. If you know a little bit, if you look at the mentality, French or Latin character is more spontaneous, more open, less skeptical, but not so reliable and not so dedicated, if I might be using that cliche. Whereas the German mentality is more skeptical, more critical, but once they say yes, they stick to it. So that seemed to be like, we call them the Prashadam friends. They weren't easy to make lots of Prashadam friends in Geneva. Oh, oui, du passage, c'est du nectar, Krishna, c'est okay. But dedication, surrender, become brahmachari, whatever. No, j'aime la liberté, and so like that. But those who came from the German part, they were more dedicated. So that was the reason Guru Granga was looking for a place in the German part of Switzerland, so he felt devotees would much easier join. And there was one gentleman, he had this little farm in Fribourg, for a rent of 1 franc per year. He was able to get it, Guru Granga. It was a little bit downrotten, it was really, you know, like out in the La Pampa, so to say, but it was a beautiful place, Imlital called it, in Düdingen. It's between Fribourg and Bern, but really not, you know, like Zurich in the center of something. And for 10 years the devotees were there, and that was also the time 78, but then I joined there. But that was already the time when we were looking for a place in Zurich, but that was his dream, to have something in the biggest city of Switzerland, the most opulent city of Switzerland, the most prestigious city of Switzerland. So we had a little center in Zurich. It's in Kreis 4, those who know it. There's also, you know, what was the place called where Prabhupada had his first temple in New York? Bowery. So no, a little bit, you know, less expensive apartments, alcoholics, South Americans, hippies, freaks, people, you know. So Zurich also has this area called Kreis 4, Langstrasse, and that was where we had our first temple. It was a little apartment in 79. It was open, just like 2 apartments, was packed with anything. And from there, Guru Granga was trying to look for a place. This place here originally belonged to a banker, Julius Baer. It was constructed, I think, in 1909. And when Guru Granga first wanted to buy it, it was like over 2 million francs, because the land was there and the condition was that they could do the renovation. And of course the Lakshmi wasn't there, so Guru Granga said no, but then like half year again he saw it was still empty For sometimes even the house was here occupied because the children of Julius Baer didn't want to stay here, and it was difficult to rent it because it was not allowed to make offices here. There's some rules how many square meters are allowed for offices and for living. For a normal family it's too big, and for offices it was not allowed, so for a community it was ideal. So when half a year later the place was still not possible to sell it, Gurgang again approached the owner and said, my condition remains, we only take this part, the land you can sell separately, and we want to do the renovation ourselves. So in March 1980 we moved in here, and I tell you, it was a mess. Rich people, they can afford to buy anything they want, and we had things from the basement to the attic, I think over 20, how do you call them? This huge where you put things when you do construction, containers. We had 2.5 weeks marathon. Harikesh Swami was at that time in charge. There was no Sankirtan, there was nothing else, just cleaning, getting rid of rubbish, doing like emergency work. Even here there were 2 walls that was separated. There was a, I think, 2-ton steel holder through the window, with the crane was brought in so we could open it and have a bigger temple room, and it was just mad the first 2.5 weeks. I remember we were sleeping somewhere, dusty, dirty, all these many old goods from these people who were living here, and after 2.5 weeks, gradually had a little kitchen, and but the Dietis came, they were still in Düdingen. Dietis, I think they came either in November 80 or in November 81 was Harikesh Swami's Vyasa Puja, and they were first, I think they came in 80, yeah, late 80, and they were in the Prasadam room, because the temple first had to be kind of renovated, constructed. Guru Granga ordered an altar from New Vrindavan, unfortunately in plastic, but that was at that time the mood. The murtis can be in plastic, the altar can be in plastic. Fortunately later on it has been replaced. And for about a year they were there, and yeah, I think that was November 81 where they were moved here, and was ecstatic. There were the German Sankirtan devotees here, and Gaura-Nitai came here, and then 84 Jagannath. Actually the carving of Jagannath was already started 79 in Düdingen. We called this devotee, he was from Austria, Vivaswan was his name, the slowest carver in the universe. It took him 4 years. It was on the Shivaratri when Lord Jagannath has been installed, and it was always considered a first-class combination, Shishi Gaura-Nitai and Shishi Jagannath Swami, but Guru Granga had another desire. He wanted Radha Krishna. Whatever. So he ordered them, I think from Jaipur they were ordered. They came to Switzerland, but the standard was, as far as I remember, in order to have Radha Krishna on the altar, you need 12 brahmanas. And the mood was strongly, we have to distribute books and we can't have so many brahmanas. So they were in the basement or somewhere in a room for years. And just so at one point, Madhusevita Prabhu from Italy purchased them, and so they went to Medolago. And now we have at least Radha Gopinath as Utsav festival murtis coming on Snana Yatra, Janmastami and Ratha Yatra. Or Chulan Yatra. Radhashtami and Janmastami, right? 3 times per year they manifest. So I think we are very, very fortunate to have beautiful, merciful, tolerant, powerful Gaura-Nitais here. And I think they're also happy to be close with Jagannath, and together we can worship them. And it's interesting when someone comes first time to the temple, there are people, they don't notice the altar. There's some light and there may be some flowers, but they see nothing. Mandali Bhadra, all he noticed for months was just Jagannath. He saw the big guys. He never noticed Gaura-Nitai. So everyone has, Yeya Tang Mambrapadyante, Tang Statavi Bhajami Aham. Krishna reveals himself according the way a devotee approaches him. So that's the beauty of Krishna consciousness. Some like Bala Krishna, some like Vishnu, some like Ramachandra, some like Gaura-Nitai, some like Jagannath, etc. This is something for everyone. We are individual, and Krishna reciprocates with us individually. Yeah, and I think, in conclusion, a day like today is a unique day to get the special mercy of Gaura-Nitai. It's, you can say, Gaura-Nitai's birthday in Switzerland. And I like sometimes to a little bit compare things also in the material world. If someone has his or her birthday and people come and bring gifts and glorify the person, how does the person feel? Very, happy, joyous, merciful. Oh, you want this? Take it. Oh, yeah, it's okay. I forgive you. No problem. So it's a special day to take advantage of the mercy of Gaura-Nitai, because I think today they give special mercy and they reciprocate beautifully. If I may just conclude with 3 aspects, how deities can be seen. Our senses, our 5 senses, can only receive material aspects. The eye cannot see spiritual form. The tongue cannot experience spiritual taste. There's one exception, the ear. The ear can receive both material sound and spiritual sound. That's why Vedanta Sutra talks about Shabda Brahman. The Brahman, the spirituality, can be received through listening, hearing. But Krishna gives us possibilities to engage all our senses in experiencing Him. To experience something is actually the most important thing. We may hear so many things, we may read so many things, but it's often more like jnana. But when we experience it, then becomes vijnana. And no one can take us away what we've experienced. So many people may claim so many things, but what we personally experienced, we know for sure. This remains our entire life. So Krishna gives us many possibilities to experience, taste, see, hear Him. The holy name is a form, Klangkörper, as it is called, is the sound, body of a sounder, so we can hear it, the holy name, and the murti is like that. And you can have, like, this little bit came clear to me when I was guiding school classes. We had sometimes a lot of school classes here coming to the temple, and of course many saw them as puppets or statues or idols. And I started to differentiate like 3 different things. The lowest level is, in German it's called Götze, in English it's idol. And the English who were preaching in India, they did a very bad job, because they translated the word murti with idol. And nowadays I think like 90% of the Indians, oh, this is idol of Krishna, this is idol of Rama, but actually it's a very bad word for it. It's a divine or spiritual form for it. Like I said, those who know German, Götzen. Idol worship. It's some generally speculative form you create in order to achieve materialistic, or even demoniac goals. Then the second level is a statue. Actually, we have many statues in the temple. Out there is a statue of Kali Krishna, we have other Krishna statues, Ganesh, Shiva, like that. And then, of course, we have the murti. Question to you, what's the difference between a statue of Krishna and the murti of Krishna? Archa Vigraha, the manifestation, the avatar of Krishna on the altar, who we worship, and Kali Krishna or all the others. Sometimes maybe we take some dust away from them, but they're not getting any prasadam. No one offers obeisances to them. Maybe some pious Hindus sometimes might like this, or maybe take a little bit the dust from their feet. But generally, we notice them and we walk by and don't say Haribol to them. So who can give short and precisely what's the difference between the murti and the statue?
They are spiritual and they are material and they are spiritual.
Isn't Krishna spiritual?
Yes.
So why is that material? Material Krishna, spiritual Krishna. Duality.
Krishna is not there.
Mm-hmm.
Only the form is there, but not Krishna himself.
So you have pran pratishtha for the deity.
Excuse me?
For the deity here, you do the pran pratishtha. So
Yes.
they are living. They are like, yeah, they are living.
But what's the difference? If I see a statue of Krishna and I see a murti, prana pratishtha means the ceremony to invoke that Krishna appears in that form, transforms it into a spiritual form. Okay, I help you. A statue represents Krishna, or we have in Zurich 5, I don't want to mention their names, statues of personalities who were mayors and big industrials like that. They represent, it's like a photo. If you have a photo of your parents or of your wife or girlfriend or whatever, for some it may be just paper, but for you it represents your parents and it has a certain meaning. So a statue of Krishna represents Krishna, and the murti is Krishna. That's the difference. And why in the beginning the statue, in the beginning the murti was maybe also just a statue. But through that process, as you mentioned, the prana pratishtha can be quite complex in certain, especially South Indian brahmanas, they do for days, purification, mantra chanting, everything is there. And ultimately the essence of it is that the pure devotee calls Krishna to appear. And Krishna cannot say no. It's like when someone invites you with love, how can you say no not to go? You feel like, yeah, of course, so much love, this person invites me, so I have to go. I want to go. So Krishna comes and appears in the murti form. And then he's treated like a guest, a personality who's here. And even if the ordinary people, the Hindi, can help me, Atitha Bhavan Deve, what's the saying going in Hindi?
Atiti Devo Bhavan.
Right, Atiti Devo Bhavan. Titi means time. Atiti means out of the unexpected, without announcing that he's coming. Devo is like a god. Bhavan when he's coming in your house. So a guest, it has not to be treated like a king or a queen, but like a god. And now if we invite Krishna, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or Jagannath, then of course we take a responsibility. That's why after the prana pratishtha, Krishna is here. And according to the standards, families have it more simple, some temples have it more elaborate. You do all this, awakening, abhishek, outfits, prasadam, bhoga offering, prasadam, etc., arti, like that, because Krishna is here as a guest. That's the difference. We respect statues because they represent Krishna or whoever, even material persons, but this is something unique. And here also, I remember one time some school class was here, and one person said, was a young woman, I think the more spiritually advanced I am, the more I can see that this is divine here on the altar. It's an interesting point. When you have material consciousness, as I quoted this Bhagavad Gita 4:11, Krishna reveals himself according to the way you approach him. If you consider him just a puppet or some statue, then yeah, I'm neutral. I'm in Switzerland, I stay neutral. But if you have a lot of devotion and love, Krishna reciprocates accordingly. It's up to us. Krishna doesn't intervene. He gives us the freedom because the relationship is based on love, but he's here. And I think all of us, or all of us, otherwise you wouldn't hear, feel this is not just a statue. There is so much mercy, so much beauty, so much kindness, so much spiritual power there. That's why we are very fortunate to have Gaura-Nitai here since 49 years. Thank you very much. Any comments, corrections, things I said wrongly?
I have a question. The story, is this story true? Did you hear the story where there was a woman arriving at the main station in Zurich? She got out of the train and saw a light shooting out of Zurich in the sky. And this woman, she saw this light and said, what is this light? Then she asked the taxi driver, please bring me there. And she ended up here. She was never here in the tent. She was not a devotee, nothing. She just saw light going up to the sky. This story was told to me many times.
Oh yeah, I never heard it. Miracles happen, but if you know a little bit India, there also miracles are sometimes created. They're good narrators. Oh, if you come to this murti, there was a very poor man, and he came here nothing, but then he saw the murti, and when he came home, so much wealth was there. You must go to that murti and, you know, give donations like that. You know, Navadvip is an example of Lord Chaitanya's appearance place, which was created, some say, in order that people come with rupees. So, what I would, it's possible, I definitely won't deny it, but sometimes it's better to quote Shastra than far out stories. But we like to get some entertainment, that's why we have Puranas, we have Itihanas, we need this thing as well. We're not, everyone is pure Brahmana who's happy, just Vedanta Sutra, Upanishads, and you know, like this abstract philosophical aspect. So this is a little bit the chili or the whatever the spice we need in order to that the soup is not too possible. It's always important. We should not English. We may listen to it. We may see, oh, some people have that understanding, but we don't judge it in a negative way. We can say, for me this makes sense, or for me this makes no sense. In German you call it beurteilen und verurteilen. One important aspect is the brain has to differentiate. That's why we have buddhi. It's one of the qualities of the intelligence. We're able to, what is relevant for me, what is not relevant for me, and act accordingly. We don't have to accept anything, but why not? Krishna is not limited. Miracles happen all the time, and miracles happen here. This soul is certainly fortunate. If she saw the light and then came to the temple, why not? Anything else? You're hungry. Kandari Prabhu, some nectar from you. What's your experience when you come to Switzerland and see Gaura-Nitai and Jagannath? He has been over 20 years temple president of Radha Gokulananda and Sitaram, Lakshman and Hanuman in Bhaktivedanta Manor. He has seen the world. Now he's coming sometimes to Little Switzerland.
I have to say I feel very fortunate to have...
Give you the mic.
Okay. Thank you. I have to say I feel very fortunate to have come upon this the Zurich temple, because I hadn't been to Switzerland before 2 years ago, and to discover such a lovely little enclave of spirituality here in this, it's a very important city, and particularly to find such a wonderful group of devotees dedicated to looking after Gaura-Nitai and Jagannath Subhadra Baladev. You know, we were reading, we had a retreat for the 50th anniversary of Radha Gokulananda just a couple of months ago, and one of the little workshops we did, the devotee Amita, who's been involved with the book distribution and BBT over all these years, had dug up the old Sankirtan newsletters that used to come out of LA, because every week the devotees from every temple would send their scores in, and the newsletter would come out, and we'd be eager to see, you know, who was getting up to everything. And we were reading out the ones around, you know, 75, 76, and there was Zurich as we'll call it a large temple at between 25 and 45 devotees. It was considered a large temple, and top of the list, and you know, top book distributors at that time. So we were, you know, it had fame in my mind, Zurich, you know, from those days, because what we had was the travelling Sankirtan, Radhiko Kulananda Radhalondanishvara travelling Sankirtan party. You know, we're doing well, but we were a Maha temple, so we were we were kind of competing with the big boys, LA and others. But anyway, to come here and just discover the deities, these are very sweet Gaura-Nitai deities. Jagannath is beautiful, you know. Wonderful that the sculptor took his time to do it. But you've got a wonderful atmosphere here, and what is special, I think, is the opportunities for service to the deities, to the Sankirtan, to the devotees, and more, let us bring in these German mentality Swiss folk who will commit to being full-time devotees, so we can expand the fame of Gaura-Nitai here in Zurich. Hare Krishna.
Maybe to conclude, there is a nice story I heard. These Gaura-Nitai deities at that time, Prabhupada wasn't always able to personally give initiation to devotees or install the deities, so they were often done on behalf, with the blessings, with the sanction of Srila Prabhupada, they were installed. So that was also, Prabhupada didn't personally install those deities in 74, it was Bhagavan and others who were at that time. But then in Mayapur, those who know Mayapur, there's the long building. And there was often, especially I think that the first time they did it in 1977, when Srila Prabhupada was already quite weak, they did an exhibition of all the temples and murtis of ISKCON at that time in the long building on the bottom. So Srila Prabhupada was walking through and looking at all those murtis, and supposedly, I don't know whether it's from the PR department Switzerland, this was created, Prabhupada stopped and said, oh, these murtis are most special, and carried on. Swiss devotees. Yeah, maybe he said the same about Radha.
He said it's perfect. And then he said, but Krishna in London is such a sweet. Prabhupada loved all his deities.
Yeah.
Do you have any personal story how you could connect with the deities, or how you could see that they are alive?
I felt always more attracted to Gaura-Nitai. You see, my left brain doesn't work, the abstract things, they just... So Jagannath was to me always too abstract. Many nice stories, why Jagannath is Jagannath like that, but it's an abstract form of Krishna. But Gaura-Nitai was there. Maybe the name a little bit helped. You see things as mercy, but I have a little taste for Gaura Lila, in the sense the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I love Rancho's book on the birth of Kirtan, this poetry and nice Chaitanya Bhagavat, Chaitanya Charitamrita described. I like other scholarly books with bhakti on Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Somehow or other, if I may be that honest, I never ever had a dream of deities or of Krishna. There's some bhaktas, they after 2 nights in the temple they already say, well, I had a dream of Krishna. But they often dream of devotees and activities, and sometimes they're a little bit blurred and sometimes they're far out. And so, like the times we had, the 80s, they were intense, they were sometimes also mad, but they were also special. Like I remember Saturday evening when 50, 60 Sankirtan devotees came back, it was just mad. It was just mad. Really the house was shaking and there was so much ecstasy, but madness combined. I think when you look at things social, religiously, in the beginning there's so much enthusiasm and energy, people are young, people are idealistic, the guru is there and his presence is of course the most powerful. I heard sometimes when devotees knew Prabhupada is visiting the temple for months, they were doing a marathon, hardly sleeping. Everything was, you know, like renovated and repainted and prepared, and wow, just then Rabba came, probably you exploded in ecstasy. So 80s were a little bit like that. The madness was there, but the ecstasy was there as well. And I think in due course, according to sociological studies, people get more mature, bit more sane, but less ecstatic and less idealistic. At that time, 80s, we still were convinced we would take over the world. It's just a question of time. If we surrender as the Pandavas surrendered in 18 days, this was the mantra. We weren't just enough. So nowadays, I think that is not anymore preached in the Bhagavatam classes. Devotees surrender, we will take. We are happy that we can take over the temple here and manage it properly. What to speak of the world? Okay, I got a sign from our manager. Yeah. So whenever Akandi Prabhu is here, please take advantage. He has so much nectar to offer. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Gaura-Nitai. Yes. A push button effect. Who can I give it? What does it mean? It's not my you know, things can change so quickly. Sometimes
It's not good today.
Aha. Nein, es kann sein, dass sie da sind für das sogenannte in der Mitte, weißt du, Abhishek. Da? Wenn sie, ja, genau. Aber da sind sie installiert worden. 80 bis 120 cm
Ja, ja, das geht. Ja, ich weiß nicht doch. Was ist das?
Krishna. Schon lange nicht gesehen. So Gaura-Nitai ist ja alles davon. Yes.